This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Matt Addison with Joe Rimmer and Theo Squires alongside me for this one. We'll be taking a look back at Liverpool's frustrating draw with Newcastle United over the weekend and also assessing what comes next for the Reds with just 5 Premier League matches to go so far this season. Joe, just when Liverpool thought VAR had come to their rescue late on against Newcastle, they still managed to mess things up. It was just a completely frustrating afternoon at Anfield. They had so many chances. They should have won that by an absolute mile.
Oh, so bad, doesn't it? Yeah, they should have done. I mean, what else can you say other than what you've just said? It was one of those games where, I mean, we all feel this, don't we? Where you can just tell. You just know it's coming, don't you? And it got to about, I was on with Marcus Banks on Saturday working and we were just WhatsApping and I think he said to me after about 60 minutes, this has got last minute equaliser nailed on it. And you just agree. I mean, we've all been there. You know, I've been at Anfield where you know there's games and it just felt like one of them. You just felt it coming and you felt it coming in the second it got to like 90 minutes. You know, you think, here we go again. And it looked like Liverpool had got a lucky escape, and then they didn't get a lucky escape, and they got what they deserved because there's just something nervy about this team. I think as much as we as fans feel that this goal is coming, I think that the players feel it as well, and it becomes a self-fulfilling thing where they're obviously nervous about it, and then it happens, and it's just a shame. But it kind of sums up the season, and I think it kind of puts the last nail in Liverpool's Champions League coffin, if you like. I just hope that they can wipe the slate clean and go again next year. It's hugely frustrating, but it is what it is. There's not a lot more I can say.
Yeah, I think Joe used the word inevitable there, Theo. It did just feel inevitable, didn't it? As soon as they started missing those chances, you just knew what was going to happen because, let's face it, we've seen it time and time again this season, particularly, of course, at Anfield as well.
It's one where we saw on Monday, didn't we, against Leeds? It just keeps happening. Liverpool miss chances and it comes back to bite them. It shows how much they're missing Virgil van Dijk because I think you put him in that defence there and Liverpool win both games. Like he's getting on the end of corners, heading them clear, or he's picking up the markers. And there's just that extra intimidation when you've got him organising a defence and frightening strikers. You can actually defend properly. And Liverpool, they're not defending as a unit and they're looking very shaky. I know the commentators on BT were saying maybe it was the perfect game to have Fabinho back in that back four because he could deal with St. Maximin. Well, granted, St. Maximin played well, but he didn't really do anything with the ball, did he? He was just pace, no end product. I think that Matt Phillips, if he had been fit, a normal defence would have been fine in that. He missed Fabinho in midfield. And this game in particular, you can see what Liverpool lose when they have a midfielder in that back four because there was just no communication there. They weren't defending as a unit. They weren't in a straight line. Players were getting in behind them. They weren't picking up their men. It's like as many chances as Liverpool had. The Newcastle equaliser probably should have come sooner. And it's frustrating for Jurgen Klopp, for Liverpool. His face at the end said it all. And we're at that stage now where it's by no means a surprise. In a different week, they'd have won both games. They'd be comfortably in the top 4. And you think they've pulled out the bag, they've saved themselves. That's what we assumed was going to be happening after getting that late winner against Villa. And now they've shot themselves in the foot. And you'd imagine it's now too much ground to make up. But would they have deserved more from the season? No, not at all. Rather fitting that they throw away Champions League football in a style that is so befitting of this campaign.
I saw, I think it was yesterday, Joe, that Andrew Beasley had tweeted that in 17 of the first 28 Premier League seasons, Liverpool had no more than one league match in which they led 1-0 at half-time and ended up drawing 1 each. Of course, that's now happened twice in the space of 6 days. It also happened against West Brom a few weeks back, which started off this run of form. I suppose that sort of leads back into the sort of inevitability of it all. But how do Liverpool go about turning this around? It sort of seems so ingrained now that, as you say, it's so difficult to get yourself out of that groove because they're so far into it now.
I honestly think the only way they turn it around is by getting this season out of the way, getting players back and starting again next season. And, to put a positive spin on this, I truly believe Liverpool will be a different side when they get the likes of Van Dijk back fit, when they get the likes of Jordan Henderson fit. I was running through a piece of one of the guys earlier and just looking at the amount of things that Liverpool can look forward to. I mean, and look, everyone will aim to improve in the summer. It won't just be Liverpool, but if you think about it, Liverpool can get their first choice central defenders back, which brings them back a leader in Van Dijk and a pacier player in Joe Gomez, so they can play a higher line. They can finally play a midfield that they've barely been able to touch all season, which is Thiago, Fabinho and Henderson. I think they've played in one game together, or half of one game. That's another, some of their forwards will finally get a bit of a longer-awaited rest. They can buy more players, which I think they really do need to. The likes of Thiago and Jota can have a pre-season. They'll get crowds back. There's so many things for Liverpool, I think, that can make next season, quite exciting. And let's face it, if they don't play Champions League football, if they can do themselves a big favour and miss out in the Europa League, they could then have a break between matches, which Klopp likes, doesn't he? He's talked quite openly on the fact that he likes to train with his team. So I think they can massively get stronger. And I think the mindset change that the likes of Van Dijk and Henderson will bring back could be hugely important to getting rid of these self-doubts. But you bang on by picking that West Brom game, because that is a really weird game, I think, in this whole season, because it was the game when Liverpool's house of cards, if you like, fell down a bit, because before that, they'd done quite well. They got through, considering the major injuries that they'd struggled with. And when we'd had doubts about them, they've managed to navigate those games quite well. And then West Brom came along, and that was the first game this season when I've really felt like this team's going to score an equaliser here. Liverpool are banging at the door, but just are running out of ideas. And it was like the doubts spread so fast, and it was like, all those doubts that Liverpool had when those players had got out injured just came bubbling to the surface from one game. So, it does feel like that West Brom game feels like a real turning point in this season. And the run of form they've been on since then is almost unheard of for Liverpool. So I think things will get better, but I think they might just have to see this season out now. It has been truly grim in many respects. And, I think Liverpool just need to turn the page.
Just picking up on two things Joe said there, it's like, you think that West Brom game, that was the last one they had fans at Anfield, wasn't it? You think, well, how good Liverpool have been with fans at Anfield, like when they're saying it's 4 years and a day for the Newcastle game before they lost a game at Anfield with fans in there. You think, well, City without fans, they had the advantage that it makes no difference to them, and they have torn it up this season. Well, how much of a bounce are Liverpool going to have when those fans come back in next year? Like, they were nearly invincibles last season with all this madness going on. You put the fans back in there, and you'd half expect them to be turning it on like they did in 17-18, where they're destroying teams 3-4-0 every week, because it should give them such a boost. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that their form collapsed as soon as the fans were taken away again. Like, you gave them that little bit of a tidbit to push them over the line. And apart from West Brom, they did well over the festive period with fans supporting them. And you look at Everton as well, their home form's been so bad when they've had the fans back in and then taken away. But I'm also not taking this snobbery against the Europa League. Like, they've, I know it's a completely different point, but they've removed around from it now. So there's no extra commitments compared to Champions League football on it, unless you mess up your group. So Liverpool could turn it into a blessing in disguise. And you think, well, our fans, our generation, we had some great days in UEFA Cup, didn't we? You think of like Barcelona, Roma away, 2001. That was great, that UEFA Cup campaign. And it could be almost a new beginning for Liverpool, in the fact that we don't know what state Van Dijk's going to be, Gomez is going to be, and these players coming back from injury. So you can sort of bed them in those games. You're going to have Nico Williams, Harvey Elliott. They're going to be getting decent game time against decent sides, because we could be facing like the Juventus in the Europa League next year, Napoli, Roma, Lazio. There are going to be some big names in it. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the competition Liverpool want to be in, but they can turn it into a positive.
Yeah, Borussia Dortmund looking like they're going to be heading into that one
as well.
Some certainly big names in there. Joe, I want to throw out another statistic at you. Liverpool won 93% of the games last season in which they went 1-0 up. The only times they dropped points were against Arsenal and Burnley. That was after the title had already been confirmed. This season, they've dropped points in 36% of the games that they have dropped. Are you more on the side of it being that they're not being clinical enough in attack, or are they not strong enough in defence to withstand the late onslaught?
I think it's a bit of both, isn't it? I think if you look back to last season and the last two seasons in general, when Liverpool came so close to winning the title and then did win the title, it's easy to look back at those 2 seasons and think Liverpool were brilliant, but there were times when it was ugly, and there were times when Liverpool ground results out, and that's what you have to do to be champions. And that's where I think about the leaders that they had in Henderson and Van Dijk especially, and players like that who are big personalities who don't perhaps let those doubts get to them, and get them over the line. And now I just don't think they're getting over the line. It's no surprise that those 2 players have been taken out of the team. So I do think it's a bit of both. Liverpool's attack has become more wasteful. I don't think you're seeing the best of Firmino. Obviously, Mane is struggling. Klopp's spoken quite openly about the fact that they're taking, all 3 of those players are taking one too many touches at times, perhaps not picking the right passes at the right time. I think on Saturday, every time they missed the chance, it was just a case of taking the odd touch too many, or putting the ball into the wrong area, or pulling it back too late, or shooting when they could pass. So, I think when things are going well, that really flows. And you look back to their first season together in 17-18 that Theo's just mentioned, and they played without really thinking, didn't they? It was all second nature, and it was natural. And I think as they've struggled, that's become a bigger thing. So you just hope that in the summer they can.
Really good point, this one.
But I do think in the last couple of seasons. Sorry?
Your audio cut off there.
Yeah. For how long?
I think we got all but the last 10 seconds. So if you want to do the last 10 seconds again, because we're not live, we can.
I can't remember what I was saying, but basically, I think last season was a case of like a lot of the games weren't particularly great to watch, and Liverpool could grind them out when the going they get tough, and they've not been able to do that this season. And I think it's down to the fact that they've had big players missing, and any team in the world would miss the players that Liverpool have missed.
I thought taking Thiago off was a bit of a strange move in the second half. He was the only one whose passes seemed to be sticking when they went forwards. Was that a mistake, do you think, from Jurgen Klopp in hindsight?
Potentially, because he could have been a player to keep hold of the ball, retain it, and sort of kill the game a little bit. But at the same time, we've rarely seen him complete 90 minutes this season, and it does take a lot to adjust to English football, as we've seen from him this year. And it's one where in previous games where he has been taken off, you haven't really seen it as a mistake then. Like Curtis Jones coming back from injury, it's understandable why he'd want to get minutes in his legs. It just so happens we're talking about it because Liverpool dropped points. But then is Thiago on the pitch going to be the player that stops the disallowed goal and then stops the actual goal? Not really. He's not going to be the man marking them or cutting out the passes, is he? He's the one who's supposed to unlock it at the other end. So it's one of those where who else could he really take off unless he wanted to go more defensive? It's unfortunate how it worked out, but it's one of those, isn't it? It's not been Thiago's season. It's not been Liverpool's season. Don't really know where Joe's gone either. It's probably not been his podcast here. But yeah, you can't really say it's a mistake because there've been so many decisions like this all season long where things have just not worked Liverpool's way.
Joe's back, so I'll throw over the next question to Joe. I wanted to ask you, Joe, about the front four playing together once again. I think that's only the third time this season that they've started a game together. What did you make of it? I wrote a piece this morning for Liverpool.com saying that I think we will see a front four again, but maybe not until the likes of Fabinho and Van Dijk are back in that Liverpool team.
I think that's a really good point, yeah. It just didn't work, did it? And I thought, I must admit, when I saw the team sheet before the game, I thought it would work. I thought that Liverpool would be able to, create big chances against Newcastle. And look, as much as we say it didn't work, and it wasn't the most attractive from Liverpool in the first half, but they did create opportunities. And I do wonder if they'd have scored, a second goal. They scored pretty early on, didn't they? They scored a second goal, whether we'd be talking about a different type of result from that front four at the moment. So it can be fine margins, but I think Liverpool didn't control the game as well as they could have. And I think you're right. I think once you get Van Dijk back and Fabinho back into midfield, I think that front four might be a better option. I'm trying to think back to they obviously played against Man City away, didn't they? God, the season's just been completely messed up in my head. But who played alongside them in that game when it it surprised people because it worked quite well, didn't it? Very, very aggressively.
Would that have been Fabinho in midfield? Because Joe Gomez was fit for that one, wasn't it? He hadn't been injured yet.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was, but I know that the second half against Arsenal, they did a front four in that one, and Fabinho was definitely in midfield for that one.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point that you've made about Fabinho. I think Liverpool have missed him in midfield a lot this season, and to make that front four work, it might be that he needs to be there.
Yeah, you look at Van Dijk and Fabinho; they're almost two players, aren't they? Like, you can just leave them back to defend, and everyone can go get forward, and you can muck it up at one end. But Fabinho and Van Dijk will bail it out because they can just cover so much ground between them. They're intimidating figures. They've got the pace, and they just know what to do. They're like the best players in their positions in world football, and if you use them correctly, as Liverpool have done for so long, then you deliver the goods from it. And it'll be when you get Van Dijk back in that defence, you get Fabinho back holding midfield, then we can see like Thiago getting forward more. We can see Trent and Robertson getting forward more. The front three, you'd like to think, can gel a bit more because Salah and Mane can cut in. But at the moment, like we've already said, they just take too many touches. Like, how frustrating is it when you see Mane trying to walk it around the goalkeeper rather than just putting it in first time, or Salah wanting on his left foot so desperately and doing a little toe poke with the outside of his foot or whatever. And like we saw it against Leeds, Firmino trying to take a touch on his chest and volley it in rather than just hitting it first time. I can't remember what away game it was, but there was one where he got abused, and when he didn't shoot when it seemed like he had an open goal and he tried to cut it back for Mane. They're all overthinking it, and because Liverpool don't have those tools in the armoury to create and open teams open as much. So when they get chances, rather than just playing on instinct, putting them in the back of the net, they want to take those extra touches to try and finish it, and that's what cost in Liverpool. Whereas you think 2 years ago, you got Van Dijk 60, 70 yards back. He can just play it to any single one of them, wherever they are on the pitch, wherever he is on the pitch, and Liverpool through and goal. It's something they don't have at the moment. It just shows how much he's been missed, and Fabinho's been missed in midfield.
I think the big thing with Van Dijk is that ability to defend 1 versus 1 as well. If you've only got 2 in midfield, you really are sort of stretched in that area. But with Van Dijk, as you say, it's just like having 2 players there, and Fabinho as well. And I just wanted to touch on Diogo Jota as well, Theo. I didn't think it was his best game, but I suppose out of all of the front 4, if you could sort of say he was due an off game, it was probably Diogo Jota after the season he's had.
It's been a curious season for him because obviously he's been a sensational signing. He's scored a lot of goals. He's made an impact. Like, he's come off the bench and won games for Liverpool. He's started games and won games for Liverpool, but he's still not quite gelled with the rest of the front 3 for me, because he's not the same sort of player as he. We've just seen this prolific finisher. His passing's not at the same level of them, and they don't quite link up the same way. And I think it was one of those when they're still trying to find their feet as a 4. And he was like the same as the other 3. They were snatching at chances. Like, there was one where he was on the penalty spot and he just lashed it wide when you think you've got the whole goal to aim at there. There are a couple of misplaced passes. Yeah, he probably was due an off day, but it's one of those where most of his teammates are probably due an on day. It's been one of those seasons. You just hope it can be a one-off for him, but he hasn't been in the best form, I think, since the international break. He's scored a couple of goals, but we saw him better earlier in the season. It's just campaigns meandering out for players and, well, the team as well.
Yeah, we will come on shortly to the top 4 race and where this leaves Liverpool for the final 5 matches of their season. But as much as it was a frustrating weekend for Liverpool, it wasn't for Manchester City, Joe. I think that's their 4th League Cup in a row that they've won under Pep Guardiola. I know you're a big fan of the competition. Do you think Liverpool should take it a little bit more seriously? I know you had some points that you wanted to put forward on that.
Yeah, Mark Wakefield's written a piece about it today, and it's, I share similar sentiments to him. I just think that the League Cup is first of all, it's the first opportunity in the season to get a trophy. But I think in 5 of the 8 seasons Liverpool have won the League Cup, it's led to other trophies down the line. And even if you think about times when they've got to the final, they got to the final in 2016 and repeated that by getting to the 2016 Europa League final. In 2005, they got to the final and got to the, obviously went and won the Champions League. So, I just think it's a competition which you don't have to put that much resource to. You can change your team up without playing a completely different 11, get quite far in, and it can pay off for you. Because look, I always remember Rafa Benitez used to talk about it in Liverpool a lot, having a winning mentality. And You look at what Man City have got now. Those players expect to go out and win trophies every single season, and they won 13 major trophies now in the last 10 years or so. And I think that's because the players get so used to winning trophies that they just know what it takes. And I would like to see Liverpool. Obviously, they've got away and won the two big ones in the last 2 years, but it would be nice if they totted up a few of the smaller ones as well. And I think it can help. I think it can help in terms of winning mentality. I think it can help in terms of fostering a good energy towards the end of the season. And it's a competition that you can get quite a decent run to the final in, because at times people don't play good teams. I find it quite bizarre that even teams who don't win many trophies at all completely change their lineups for it. And Liverpool, even with a few tweaks to their lineup, can still have a better lineup than some of those teams. So to me, it's one that you could go all out and win and try and go for every season without putting too much resource in. And I always find it a bit of a shame that you see Man City pick it up every year and it's just another trophy in their cabinet. And Liverpool don't even seem to bother with that, or the FA Cup. And the FA Cup comes at a time of the season when I think teams are more tired. I think it comes after Christmas when they've had a real, difficult schedule. Whereas the League Cup, to me, you can play earlier in the season when you're not perhaps as busy with games and try and make progress. I just think it can be a bit of a wasted opportunity for Liverpool. So I would like to see them try and take it a little bit more seriously at times. I'm sure many people will disagree and say that it's not worth it. But also, just speaking from a fan's point of view, go and watch Liverpool win a trophy. I promise you, any trophy that you go and watch them win is well worth it. And there's so many teams that would give anything to see their team win a trophy. So I wouldn't turn my nose up at any trophy at all. So, I just would like to see Liverpool go for it a bit often. And it makes me frustrated to see City winning it all the bloody time.
You think back to it, Dalglish is probably the last manager that's actually tried to go out and win the domestic cups. I can remember Luis Suarez playing at Exeter City, playing against Brighton when they were lower leagues, stuff like this. And it's like, that cost Liverpool league position. Like, they've finished way down in the division, ultimately played its part in Dalglish losing his job. But Liverpool's squad was rubbish back then. They needed those trophies. You look at it now, they've got the players, they should be able to do it. And it's the fact that they didn't go all for it in the League Cup. It's ultimately what's led to Harvey Elliott going out on loan and them having to make tough decisions about players because they couldn't give them that game time. But it could easily be an audition for some of these players to stake a claim. Like we know we've barely seen Kostas Tsimikas this year because just haven't been opportunities to play him. And you get to these Premier League matches and you think, why is Klopp not resting Andy Robertson? Well, if Liverpool had actually had a proper go in a cup competition, then we might have seen a bit more from Tsimikas and some of these other players. But then at the same time, Liverpool have been hard done by cup draws at the end of Klopp. They've played so many Premier League teams and it's just not gone their way, whereas City always seem to get the kind draw. They always seem to get an easy route to the final. And then as soon as they get to those semi-finals and finals, it's a surprise when they don't win. As you said, they've got the win mentality. They just know how to lift silverware, win these trophies. And it doesn't matter what team Guardiola puts out, they find a way to do it. It's something that Liverpool need to rediscover after this season. Hopefully it can be a confidence booster for them next year if it is a change of approach from Klopp, because they'll certainly need something to mend these scars from this season where they've just fallen apart.
If Liverpool were to end up in the Europa League, Joe, do you think that just strengthens the argument for going a little bit more in the two domestic cup competitions? I suppose it takes away the excuse that you've got even bigger matches to come in the Champions League. Obviously, Liverpool would expect, even with a few changes, to get through the Europa League group, for example.
Definitely, yeah. The Europa League is another trophy I feel quite similar towards in many ways, because I do think, again, you look at the teams in it this year and everyone who's left in it, Man United are still left in it, aren't they? They have such a big chance of winning it. And it's a good trophy to win. Again, anyone who was there in 2016, I was totally gutted to lose that game. And I don't think it's a trophy that you turn your nose up to. So again, I feel quite similar towards the Europa League. I think many teams don't take it that seriously, and there's a real decent path there for you to go and win it. And Theo's right. For everything I've just said, Liverpool have been unlucky with cup draws. I mean, they went out to Arsenal this year, didn't they? So it's not like they've had. City seems to do get a decent path for a year, but yeah, I think if they're in the Europa League next season, they could take it really seriously and but they can do that with making changes. I just don't want to see them make 10 changes to a team. Make some tweaks, keep some of your main players in and bring in the players Theo's just talked about. A Harvey Elliott into a front three that includes Firmino and Mane, a Tsimikas in a back four that includes Van Dijk and Trent. I don't think you need to go out and make 10 changes each time you play in these cup competitions. And I think Liverpool have fallen into that trap at times.
Certainly something for Jurgen Klopp to think about before the start of next season, but still 5 games, Theo, to play of this season. Liverpool will still be hoping to have a chance to get back into the Champions League and finish in 4th spot. How do you assess it from this point in, though? Do you think they've still got a chance, even if it's just a slim one at this point?
They've got a chance, but at the same time, you'd imagine it should be done. Like in a normal season, it's done. They're too far back. They've not been playing well enough. But then you look at the fixtures that are left and it's like, on paper, Liverpool got the easiest run in. But then it's, again, the time of the season where weird results happen. So like Newcastle picking up points, like they've had a decent run recently. Upsets do happen. Teams need points to stay up. Teams need points to get into Europe. And it's like all these sorts of results that you're not expecting happening. What would be the odds on Liverpool turning up at Old Trafford and destroying Manchester United? It's just been one of those seasons where you can't predict it. And I think I said it on the debrief. You could ask me, will Liverpool make Champions League on a Saturday? And I'll give you a different answer on a Saturday than I will for a Monday. It changes game on game. It just depends what Liverpool turn up game on game. Like if against Newcastle, if they score one of those chances and it's 2-0, they're in the top 4 this weekend. And you're thinking, yeah, advantage Liverpool. They can definitely hold on to this. They are 4 points off. And at this stage, it does feel like it's too much for them. But Chelsea have got an horrendous run of fixtures, and I think Leicester have got a pretty bad run as well. You think, well, if Chelsea playing Real Madrid twice, and that's going to be knackering, and then they're in the Champions League final potentially, that's a distraction. There's all these mitigating circumstances that could see other teams mess it up a little bit, and Liverpool grab it with both hands. Like the only reason the top 4 battle is so tight this year, and it's because these teams that have had it in the grasp have then had a slump and thrown it away. Like every single one of like 5-6 teams have had these results, and it's just who can last the distance, who can still be in that run-in on the last day of the season. And one person, I suppose, is Crystal Palace. So maybe Liverpool can just put 7-8 past them like they did at Selhurst Park, sneak it on goal difference. But it just depends on everything else, who can blink first and whatnot. It's such a hard one to call because Liverpool have become so unpredictable.
As Theo says, Joe, I mean, Liverpool's fixtures are on paper much easier, but you don't really have too much hope that they can win all 5 of their matches. I think they've only put together a run of 3 victories. That's the best that they've managed in the Premier League so far this season. They're going to have to put together a run of at least 4, or would you even say they have to win all 5 to put themselves into the top 4 from this point?
Yeah, probably. My big worry is, United at the weekend and Liverpool going away to United haven't had a good record there in recent seasons. It has been a struggle, and they do seem to, of all the games, they do seem to freeze at United a little bit. And, I think if they go and win it, United, it could give them huge confidence. But I think if they lose there, then it'll be completely over. But as Theo said, Chelsea, the one thing that is keeping Liverpool slightly alive in this race is that Chelsea and Leicester have got a tough 2 or 3 games towards the end of the season. But I just can't see it because, like you say, they just haven't done it this season. There's no body of evidence to show that Liverpool can go out and win 4 of these 5 games or win 5 of these last 5 games. It just hasn't happened. And the way they're playing at home, even the win that they have had against Aston Villa recently was done in the last minute. I certainly wouldn't bet on it now. I think it will be Chelsea and Leicester that will manage to squeak over the line. But again, it's a bit missed opportunity because if Liverpool had got their act together and just won 1 or 2 of these home games, they could have been right in there. And to fall from being champions to out of the Champions League in one season, and I know they've had bad injuries, but to do that is just such a bitter blow because even if you're not going to be competing for the title, you really want to consolidate and still be in the Champions League. And it means that they're going to have to do something really good in the summer to try and keep up because the likes of City will not stand still. Chelsea will not stand still with a new manager. Man United will not stand still having having made progress in the last few seasons. And seems like Leicester seems to be on an upward curve, don't they? So, Everton too. So Liverpool have a big ask in the summer to right themselves.
Does it help, Theo, that Liverpool will only have one more game at Anfield without fans? They've had a pretty decent away record so far this season. It tends to be at home that they've struggled, but you fancy if there is 10,000 fans, as we expect on that final day, that could give them a little bit of a boost in that one.
You'd hope so. And it's one where, if we're being optimistic, you might have a Jordan Henderson back for the last game of the season as well. And that's a boost there. Liverpool certainly need something to give them that kick up the bum to find form again. And like Joe's just said, it's just not happened all season long. Maybe fans can be the difference. You'd like to think so, because like I said earlier, they were decent over the festive period when they did briefly get fans back. Like, it was only West Brom where they dropped points. And it's like, well, Liverpool, we all know how much they've missed their fans. We all know how much they've missed their star players. And it's going to be a boost to any team to have that return, just to get them over the line. But it's whether they'll still be in touch and distance. Because, like we said, they're 4 points off now. So if to be in control of your own destiny, you're going to have to get at least 2 points back from that and then hope results go your way. Chelsea have made changes or something with the Champions League final in sight, or Leicester have a mental freeze, having thrown it away last year. Liverpool have got this winning mentality, despite what we've seen from them this season. They've won the Champions League, the Premier League. You just hope that experience can come through. And whether it is a return of fans that can get it out of them, or a return of their captain, maybe even if we want to be really, really optimistic, Virgil van Dijk on the bench, something like that, just to have them have this fire in the belly again to at least finish the season in style and not have it as a complete write-off.
I think the most frustrating thing for me, Joe, would be if they were to miss out on the Champions League. That's at least one of probably Jurgen Klopp's final 3 seasons. They're going to be out of the top competition in Europe. That would be a big blow if we assume that he's going to move on at the end of his contract, as we think he probably will at this moment in time. To be out of the competition for that long of the time that they've got left, it just feels like a massive missed opportunity.
Let's be honest, it is a total sickener, isn't it? It really isn't what we all envisioned for this Liverpool side. They've been so good for 2 seasons, and I think they're so much better than what they've shown this season. But circumstances have transpired that for them to just drop out, and it is hugely frustrating because I feel like Liverpool have been as a club on such an upward curve, but this season's put them back. And if they miss out on the Champions League, which looks likely, it could potentially put them back even further. Let's face it, there's been a lot of speculation this season, someone like Mohamed Salah, but then suddenly be almost within his right to say, well, I'm a Champions League player. And you always run that risk when you miss out. Big players like that can turn around and seek a transfer. So it's a sickener. And yeah, I think, if Klopp's only got 3 seasons left with Liverpool, to not be in it is he belongs in there, doesn't he? And obviously you want to be there on merit. I'm not saying otherwise, but Liverpool belong in there. So it's a real shame. But you have to take it, don't you? And hopefully they can just come back stronger next season. And if they miss out on the Champions League, just have a really, really good domestic campaign and just remind everyone how good this team is. Because I think there'll be certain players there that will be hurting. I've talked about them at length on this podcast already. The likes of Van Dijk, Henderson. They won't stand for this. They won't be happy with this. The front 3, they're winners. Trent is a winner. Andy Robertson, a winner. Addison, a winner. These are players that will want to hit back next season and show that Liverpool and they're still the class that they are. So, but yeah, it's a huge sickener. I won't lie.
It's pride, isn't it? Like, you think of this Liverpool team when they are been European champions, world champions, Premier League champions. If you'd said to any of them at the start of the season, you take one player out and it all falls apart, they'd have taken that as an insult. Like, you think these are some of the best players on the planet. It should not be the case that they are not a team without one player. That's the situation they found themselves in. So it's not just the case of Virgil van Dijk making up for lost time. They will all have a point to prove that this Liverpool team is not just Van Dijk and 10 others, that it can work without him. It's just you look at historically, it could go either way, couldn't it? If they'd miss out on the Champions League, like I think Chelsea in 14-15, they missed out completely the next year when Leicester won it, and then they won the title straight back off the back of that. But then you look at an Arsenal who miss out on the Champions League, having been in it pretty much every single year under Wenger for however long, and they've just not got back to it since. And granted, they've not had to sell players, but you've got like the likes of Ozil and Aubameyang who are just sat there, just half-assing it, or picking up huge wages. You think, well, you probably should be in the Champions League. You've got the quality to be in the Champions League, and it's just not happened for whatever reason. Liverpool can't afford to make it be a step back. They need to use it as that springboard to kick on again and to just be the point to prove next season, rather than to feel sorry for themselves, wallow in their own misery and the fact that they weren't these great champions that they thought they were, and that essentially was a one-off season of brilliance. The fact that when they won the Champions League and they were so close to winning the title that year, Jurgen Klopp said this team deserves another year. They had that year, they won the Premier League title, and now it's all fallen apart when they've been given another year on top of that. Lots of questions need to be asked in that dressing room with the manager and the players, like who deserves to be in this team next season to prove that they are Liverpool quality, to get Liverpool back to the top of English football. I've waited 30 years to win this title. They can't wait 30 years for the next one. It just needs to be that one season out of the Champions League so they can kick on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of questions to be answered, but there is still 5 games. There is still a bit of hope for Liverpool, and fingers crossed they can get themselves back into the Champions League next season. But I think that just about brings us to the end of today's podcast. Make sure you're on top of all of the content that we'll bring you in the week leading up to, of course, that massive clash at Old Trafford on Sunday. For now, though, from myself, Matt Addison, from Joe Rimmer, and from Theo Squires, until next time, it's goodbye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.